As you watch this, war rages on. Where? Probably somewhere. There's no doubt about that. Human conflict has been a thing since our inception, and it won't be disappearing anytime soon. Sometimes it escalates down a dark, slippery slope, and war begins to take shape. Power, land, resources, money, religion, revenge. Mass strife can happen for any number of reasons. There can be good people fighting in wars, selfless heroes. There can be people fighting for evil purposes. Sometimes the morality scale can be gray. Some people might be good but end up having to do heinous things to protect or survive. But what about the people that are simply caught up in it all? No matter who you are in war, chances are that sacrifices will be made, and some people will have their humanity tested. People can do horrible things when they're backed into a corner. Welcome to Games for Healing, the web series where we look at games that deal with mental health, life struggles, and life lessons. A lot of video games that involve war glorified as an arcadey spectacle, oftentimes putting the player on the front lines as a powerful soldier who's armed to the teeth and skilled. They're certainly fun. The story modes of some of these games can be serious and show some semblance of reality, but I feel that for the most part, a lot of these games aren't taken very seriously, even by their own creators in some cases. You shouldn't feel bad for enjoying these games, by the way. I'm not here to sit on a high horse, but I am here to show you a game that takes things on from a different angle. This War of Mine is a subversion of the subject and how it's most often depicted in games. Rather than showing you the massive battle, it shows you how it affects people. It shows the aftermath and the ongoing struggle to survive of average everyday people, civilians who awoke to war knocking at their doors. Developed and published by 11-Bit Studios, this survival strategy game released for PC in 2014. It's become available on several more platforms since then. It takes place in a fictional city that has recently been ravaged by shellings. You control a group of survivors living in a damaged house. This will be your base of operations. The art style is both realistically gritty and stylized. It gives off the impressions of pencil sketches and graphic novels. The world is full of shadows and grays. Characters all have their own real portraits which will be staring at you for the whole game. The music can be serene and peaceful at the home base when everything is going well, or it could be dreary and droning when things are dire. When you're out scavenging, the music can get very tense. The atmosphere pretty much feels like it's out to sap your life force away. This War of Mine has got to be one of the most depressing, slow, and mind-numbing games I have ever played. But I think it's clear that's the whole point of the game. It's a realistic window into a world of civil collapse and bloodshed. There are no tutorials, no explanations, no expectations, no difficulty settings. Much like an average civilian with no military training thrown into a world of war, you're promptly thrown into the game and expected to figure everything out yourself. Every decision you make has weight. Every move potentially has major consequences. Everything is permanent. It's very unforgiving. There are 3 game modes. Classic mode has you play through different scenarios where the goal every time is to survive until there's a ceasefire. It's playing the same game multiple times just with different circumstances to keep things fresh and challenging. They'll have different characters and they might start off sick or wounded. Some might have children that you have to protect. The story mode will have you surviving as usual, but this time with a stronger focus on tugging at your heartstrings. There's 3 stories to choose from. Then there's a creative mode that lets you create your very own circumstances to survive in. During the in-game days, you'll be tending to your character's needs, building things, and interacting with the people that come to your door. During the nights, you'll be assigning people to either defend from raiders, sleep, or go out and scavenge. Both days and nights have you on a time limit. If you don't have enough people guarding your base of operations at night, or if you haven't been fortifying the house enough, raiders will come and they'll take some of your items. Any defenders might end up wounded. Going out to scavenge will give you the options of many destinations. Some are safe, some are mysterious, and some are clearly dangerous. You'll want to get as many supplies as possible while avoiding being killed by others. There will be times where areas become inaccessible due to fighting going on in them. This can lead to some tough decisions. You'll need to find a good balance between food, building materials, bandages, meds, and weapons. High-value items like coffee, alcohol, and cigarettes are also worth holding onto because they have high trade values. Each character has multiple states that must be given constant attention. These are moods, hunger, wounds, illness, and tiredness. Characters can starve to death. They can become severely wounded and succumb to the bleeding. They can become sleep deprived. Freezing to death is something that can happen during the winter. Dying from illness is possible. Either you'll randomly get sick or you'll get sick from not having enough heat in the winter. Characters can become so depressed that they won't respond to orders and they'll eventually commit suicide. You'll have to pay attention to everybody and their needs, and they'll always be needing something. If you're desperate, you can sneakily steal from people while scavenging. You can also murder people who might be on defense that might have lots of supplies. Killing a person in this game will likely make your characters depressed. Stealing will also sadden them. Doing bad things will give you great rewards but will mentally shake your characters. Different characters have different moralities, so one might be less mentally affected from stealing or killing than others. NPCs will also have reactions to your actions, which can be heartbreaking. One example of this is an old house with an elderly couple. The old man will tell his ill wife to hide and then beg you not to hurt them or steal what little they have. You can leave them be, kill them, which will give you the items they're carrying, or steal from them. Stealing their important belongings will lead to you finding them dead later on, if you visit the house again. Alternatively, doing good deeds can improve your character's moods. Over the course of a few days, some children came to my door asking for supplies for their sick mother. I gave them what they needed, and eventually them and their mother showed up together and thanked me with coffee beans. This game has many hours worth of content, but after beating just one of the many scenarios, I think I got my fill. I played for about 10 hours. It took me 4 attempts to reach the end of the war. I've played plenty of depressing games. This one is hands down the one that took the most out of me. I felt a strong desire to make it to the ceasefire, and to have at least one person survive. This game wasn't putting me in a good headspace. Despite that, I kept going. Not only is it sad, but it's loaded with long periods of just waiting around, waiting for the characters to perform actions, waiting for the trader guy to show up at the door, waiting for people to rest, waiting through the long, plain loading screens. When your characters are depressed, wounded, ill, exhausted, or starving, they'll move very slowly. When they're depressed, they'll stop midway when performing actions to say something bleak. When you're not waiting around, you're out doing something where things can get tense and your character can get killed in an instant. Once all of your characters are dead, that's it, you're done. You'll have to restart your playthrough. All of your progress will be lost, and the only thing you'll retain is the knowledge you gained. The fact that you have to learn how the game operates yourself outside of showing you the controls means that a lot of things are just trial and error. There's very little room for experimentation since things can be so punishing. Even if you've learned from your past mistakes, the game can sometimes just decide to screw you over with randomness. The difficulty and punishment of it all is demonstrated clearly by the Ernest Hemingway quote in the intro. In modern war, you will die like a dog for no good reason. Things can be going very well, and then they can just fall apart. Your playthrough could go straight down the toilet at any moment if you get careless. You really have to learn how to play, and if things take a turn for the worse, you have to know how to recover. I think that all of these things were the intention of the developers. This war of mine isn't supposed to be fun or enjoyable. It's supposed to be a lesson, a powerful statement about the harshness of war, how it can ruin lives and strip some people of what makes them human. The average person won't go into war having any sweet clue of what to do. They'll have the many needs of themselves and others to deal with, and things can go from 0 to 100 in the blink of an eye. Despite all of this, it's also a story of hope. The constant waiting around in the game is meant to be a reflection of the fact that civilians in war are often stuck waiting things out in hiding. Sometimes waiting is all you can do. I was thinking that things would be a lot more enjoyable if the game would add a speed up time button, but that defeats the purpose. You can prematurely end days, but that's often a bad idea. You'll want to use the time to do as much as possible and not miss the people who come to your door. I was also thinking that maybe the game could use accessibility options in the form of difficulty modes. That also defeats the point. War is hard, and this game isn't just a game. It's an anti-war message that's meant to be difficult. To make it easy would undermine the message. I considered using an online guide to learn the nitty-gritty of all of the experience's mechanics. That way things would be smooth sailing. But once again, that would defeat the point. The player is supposed to be an inexperienced civilian. I wanted to have an authentic experience, so I opted not to get help online. The most I did was read about some players' stories and their opinions. I feel like I barely beat the game because 3 of my 4 characters either died or left. When the first death happened, all of the other people became severely depressed. Everything took a nosedive from there, and I was barely getting by, as I lost 2 more people along the way, leaving just one to fend for herself. Thankfully, I had enough food from animal traps to feed her, and enough alcohol to keep her from hanging herself, which is what she did in a previous playthrough attempt. Alcohol boosts a character's mood, but it leaves them incapable of doing anything because they're drunk. When she was sick or wounded, I took her to the hospital where there are kind, helpful people that would patch her up and give her medication. I managed to reach the end of the war without killing anybody at all. But I did have no choice but to steal from others on a few occasions. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it to the end. This war of mine forces you to make difficult moral decisions. No matter how necessary, a crime is still a crime, and the game will try to make you feel the guilt. The developers clearly take this game's subject matter seriously. Obviously, it's heavily based on real-world events, specifically a city siege in Bosnia in 1992. The devs went as far as consulting with real war survivors during development for a more real experience. They've donated up to $850,000 to the Ukrainian Red Cross during 2022's recent events of Ukraine being invaded by Russia. I bought the game on sale for about $2, with half of that being donated. Normally the game costs about $20. This war of mine seems to have a dedicated fan base with lots of people calling it their favorite game. I can understand why from an artistic standpoint. Many people have become so good at the game that the difficulty has become trivial, and they've become desensitized to the sad parts. They wish they could go back to the way it felt when they started. It's won over 100 awards and has sold incredibly well. It's definitely among the world's most successful indie games. It's resonated with people so strongly that during the academic year of 2020 to 2021, this war of mine was added to the recommended reading list of Polish high schools, the world's first initiative to add video games as recommended readings in school. That's a huge deal for the medium, which goes to show how powerful it can be. The Microsoft Windows version of this war of mine is free to download from the Polish government website, and even includes lesson topics for teachers. I can only recommend this game to you if you meet the following criteria. 1. Mental fortitude. Don't play this game if you're depressed or in a generally bad headspace. This war of mine is designed specifically to make you feel crappy. You should only play it if you want to feel the message. Don't play it if you have PTSD from war-related things. 2. Time and patience. As I said before, this war of mine has endless amounts of just waiting around. You could always do something else while you wait. 3. Playing the game on PC. This game was designed for a mouse and keyboard, and it really shows. I played on console, and the controls from what I've read are much worse. On PC, you switch between characters and just click what you want them to do. They go do it, and you can go immediately tell someone else what to do. On console, you have to manually walk everywhere, which takes up more time. The act of walking and choosing commands also feels clunky. Simply clicking options with a mouse would be so much easier. I'm sure that the PC version will load faster too. I played on Switch and the loading times weren't great. Also, keep in mind that there's no shame in using a guide to do a bit of research before playing. You're allowed to play it however you want. If I could suggest a way to improve the game for its intended purpose, I would improve the game's dialogue. I noticed that all of the characters share and repeat a lot of it. The dialogue can also be a bit awkwardly written sometimes. In order to make the characters all the more real, and to make the players more attached to them, I think that everybody should have entirely unique things to say. This War of Mine is a finely designed survival game with intentional issues. The experience boils down to watching people suffer and doing your very best to beat the odds and survive. It gives you a lot of freedom to create your own narrative, considering how many options you have to go about with things. Give it a try if you think you can handle it. If it proves to be too unforgiving or miserable and you leave it, I don't blame you. The ending isn't an entirely good one. Even if you do survive, your characters will live the rest of their lives forever scarred. They'll have a lot of healing ahead of them. The city they live in will need to be repaired too. When it comes to content volume, I only scratched the surface of this game, yet I still feel like I got the fully intended emotional impact. I had a terrible time playing this War of Mine, and so will you. Playing the game is absolutely draining, but it is nothing compared to the real horrors of war. Let's hope that our world can become a much more peaceful place one day. Until next time, I'll see you later. Stay strong out there.